If you've been listening for a while, you know that I've been doing deep work in the area of nervous system regulation or resilience. And the more I learn, the more I realize that so much of what we're struggling with, the anxiety, the reactivity, the feeling of being stuck, is not a character flaw. It's our nervous system trying to protect us. So today, I want to introduce you to 3 concepts that aren't just nice ideas. They're actionable, they're livable, they are foundational needs that your nervous system has in order to feel safe enough to let you actually live the life you want, not to just survive it. They apply to your relationship with your adult kids or your spouse, to the hard conversations at work, to the way you talk to yourself at 2 a.m. when you can't sleep. Welcome to the Seasons of Joy podcast. I'm Jill Pack, your host, and this is episode number 191, entitled The 3 C's of Wellbeing: Context, Choice, and Connection. Today, I want to share with you these 3 concepts and why they are so important to our well-being. I have learned these concepts from one of my mentors and coaches, Leah Davidson. So grab your favorite drink and let's dive in. Let's start with context. And I think this one might surprise you because when we think about well-being, context isn't usually the first thing that comes to our mind. But stay with me. Your nervous system is constantly scanning for danger and safety. It's looking around and asking, do I understand what's happening here? Does this make sense? Am I oriented? When we lack context, when things feel confusing, unpredictable, or like we don't have the full picture, our nervous system reads that as a threat. It signals danger, and that's when we start to feel anxious, hypervigilant, or we shut down. Think about a time when you walked into a room and everyone went quiet. You didn't know what they were talking about, and you didn't know if it was about you or not. What happened in your body? Your stomach may have tightened. Your mind might have started racing. That's your nervous system responding to a lack of context. This is especially relevant for women in midlife who are navigating changed relationships with their children, with their spouse, or in their professional life. So as an example, let's say when your adult child makes a choice you don't understand, maybe they've stepped away from your faith, or they're in a relationship that doesn't make sense to you, or they've suddenly gone distant. Your nervous system is flooded with confusion. You don't have the context. You don't understand the why. And that lack of understanding doesn't just make you feel sad, it makes your body feel unsafe. So what do we do about it? The work of context isn't about controlling the situation. It's about giving your nervous system enough information to settle down. Here are a few ways to think about this. First, get curious instead of certain. When we don't understand something, our brain wants to fill in the blanks, and it almost always fills them in with the worst case scenario. So instead, we can practice saying, I don't have the full picture yet, and that's okay. I can hold space for not knowing. That alone can send a signal of safety to your nervous system. Second, seek understanding, not agreement. Context doesn't mean you have to agree with what's happening. It means you're willing to understand it. You can say to your child, help me understand what this means to you. You're not endorsing their choice, you're creating context. And that helps both your nervous system and theirs feel safer. And third, give yourself context about your own reactions. When you feel that flood of emotion, the fear, the grief, the anger, you can pause and you can say, oh, this is my nervous system responding to the unknown. This makes sense. I'm not broken. I'm human. That's providing context to yourself, and it's one of the most regulating things you can do. Context is essentially your nervous system's way of saying, I need to understand enough to know that I'm going to be okay. Now let's talk about choice, because this one is big, I think. For so many women, especially those of us who have spent decades prioritizing everyone else's needs, this is the one that hits the closest to home. So here's the principle. When we feel trapped and without choice, our nervous system senses danger and triggers a survival response. So let me say this again because I really want you to understand this. When you feel like you have no choice, your body interprets that as a threat. It's not dramatic, it's not weak, it's just biology. Think about an animal who's caught in a trap. What does it do? It fights, it freezes, or it collapses. That's the survival response. And our nervous systems work the same way. When we believe we're stuck in a marriage dynamic, in a pattern with our kids, in a job, in a way of being that doesn't fit anymore, our body goes into survival mode. And when we're in survival mode, we're not our best selves. We snap, we withdraw, we people please, we numb out. None of those responses are who we really are or who we want to be. They're what happens when our nervous system has concluded that there's no other way out. So here is a beautiful thing about this principle. You almost always have more choice than you think you do. The problem isn't usually that there's no choice. The problem is that we've stopped seeing the choices available to us. Sometimes the choices aren't the ones we want. I'm not going to pretend that the options in front of you are always easy, but the shift from I have no choice to I have choices, and some of them are hard, is a completely different experience for your nervous system. One feels like a trap, and the other feels like agency. I think about this in my own life. When my children made choices about their faith that were different from mine, there was a season where I felt trapped in grief, like there was nothing I could do, and my body reflected that. I was either in fight mode, trying to fix everything, or in freeze mode, feeling numb and hopeless. But the turning point came when I began to see that I did have choices, not about their decisions, but about mine. I could choose how I showed up. I could choose to love without conditions. I could choose curiosity over control. I could choose to grieve and still find joy. Those choices didn't change their paths, but they changed my nervous system's experience of the situation entirely. So here's a practice that I love for this. When you notice yourself saying, I have to go to that dinner, I have to respond right now, I have to keep the peace, try replacing it with, I'm choosing to. I'm choosing to go to that dinner because my relationship with this person matters to me. Can you feel the difference? It's the same action, but it's a completely different nervous system response. I have to activates that trap. I choose to activates agency. Sometimes the most powerful choice is the one that surprises you. The choice to stay and show up differently. The choice to set a boundary that you've never set before. The choice to allow things to be messy without trying to fix them. That's what we've talked about before on this podcast, the difference between allowing and forcing. When we force, we're operating from that trapped place. When we allow, we're operating from choice. And that brings us to the third C, and maybe the one that resonates most deeply with me, connection. We are wired for connection. It's not just nice to have. It's not just an indulgence. Connection is a biological need. When our nervous system feels connected, truly connected, it can relax. It can regulate. It can open up to growth, creativity, love, and yes, even joy. But here's what I want you to understand. Connection isn't just about other people. It's wider and richer than that. I believe we need connection in 4 areas to truly thrive. And when any of this is missing, our well-being suffers. So the first is connection to ourselves. And I put this first on purpose because this is where so many of us have the biggest gap. For years, decades for many of us, we've been so outward focused that we've lost connection with our own inner world. We don't know what we feel. We don't know what we need. We don't know what we want. We've been so busy being the mother, the wife, the caretaker, the peacekeeper, that we lost ourselves in the roles. And I want you to understand that I'm not saying these roles are bad and that we shouldn't care what other people think or what they want or what they need. Of course, we're going to take that into consideration and we want to serve our families. But when it comes at the expense of taking care of and connecting with ourselves, that's when we run into problems. Reconnecting to yourself means learning to listen to your body again. It means honoring your emotions instead of stuffing them down. It means treating yourself the way you'd treat a dear friend, with curiosity, compassion, and kindness. It means asking, what do I need right now? And actually waiting for the answer. This is the foundation, because if you're disconnected from yourself, every other connection you try to build will be on shaky ground. The second is connection to others. And I don't just mean being around people, I mean real, authentic, safe connection. The kind where you can be honest, the kind where you can be yourself, the kind where you don't have to perform or pretend. Our nervous system can tell the difference between surface level interaction and genuine connection. You can be in a room full of people and feel completely alone. And you can have one conversation with someone who truly sees you and you feel your whole body relax. This is what is known as the I-thou relationship, a concept that I've talked about before, in which I learned from the Arbinger Institute. When we relate to someone as a full human being, as a thou, not as a project to fix, not as a role to fill, but as a person with their own inner world, that's the kind of connection that regulates the nervous system. It's what our bodies are looking for. And yes, this applies to the hard relationships too. You can hold a boundary and stay connected. You can disagree and still relate to someone as a whole person. That's the work of what Chad Ford calls dangerous love. Love that's willing to be uncomfortable for the sake of something real. And the third area is connection to nature and the world around us. And I have to tell you, this one has become so important to me personally. There's something about being outside, feet on the earth, wind on your face, looking at the mountains here in Cache Valley, that recalibrates something deep inside of me. It's not just relaxation, though it is that. It's kind of a remembering that you're part of something bigger, that the world keeps turning, the seasons keep changing, and you are being held. When I am backpacking, there's usually a point on day 2 where something begins to shift. The noise in my head quiets, the body settles into a rhythm, and I stop trying to figure everything out, and I just am. That's nervous system regulation happening in real time through connection to the natural world. You don't have to backpack to experience this. It might be 10 minutes sitting outside with your morning drink. It might be noticing the way the light changes at dusk. It might be putting your hands in the garden soil. Your nervous system responds to the natural world because we belong to it. We're part of creation. And when we remember that, something settles inside of us. And the fourth, and for me the most foundational, is connection to God. Now, I know this might look different for everyone listening, and I want to honor that. But I'm going to speak from my own experience because that's what I know to be true. So for me, connection to God is the ground beneath all the other connections. When I feel disconnected from Him, everything else feels more precarious, more effortful, more frightening. But when I'm anchored in that relationship, when I remember that I am seen and known and loved by my Creator, my nervous system has a home base to return to. This is where the concept of grace comes alive for me. In Greek, the word for joy is rooted in the same word as grace. Joy and grace are intertwined, and when I'm connected to God, I have access to a kind of joy that isn't dependent on my circumstances. My kids don't have to make the choices I want. My life doesn't have to look the way I planned or thought it would look. I can still experience deep, abiding joy because it's rooted in something that doesn't change. Connection to God is also what gives me the courage to allow rather than force. Because when I trust that He is at work, even in the mess, even in the waiting, even in the grief, I can open my hands instead of clenching my fists. That's a regulated nervous system responding to a secure spiritual attachment. So here's what I want you to take away from today. Context, choice, and connection aren't just nice ideas. They're the conditions your nervous system needs to feel safe enough for you to actually live well. When you have context, when you understand what's happening, even if you don't like it, your nervous system can orient. When you have choice, when you recognize your agency, even in difficult circumstances, your nervous system can relax out of survival mode. And when you have connection to yourself, to others, to the natural world, and to God, your nervous system has the relational anchor it was designed for. These three work together. Context helps you connect more authentically because you're not projecting stories onto people. Choice helps you stay in connection even when it's hard because you're there by intention, not obligation. And connection gives you the safety to seek context and make brave choices. This is the work I'm most passionate about right now, helping women understand that the path to joy isn't about getting everything right. It's about creating the conditions where your whole self, your body, your mind, and your spirit can settle enough to actually receive the goodness that's already there. So I want to leave you with a few questions to sit with this week. You don't have to answer them right now. Just let them percolate. On context, where in your life are you filling in the blanks with worst case scenarios? What would it look like to get curious instead of certain? On choice, where are you saying I have to when you could say I'm choosing to? Are there choices you've been afraid to make that might actually set your nervous system free? And finally, on connection, which of the 4 areas of connection feels most depleted for you right now? Self, others, nature, or God? What's one small step you could take this week to nourish that connection? Thank you so much for being here today, my friends. I hope this gave you something to carry with you this week. And I want you to remember that your nervous system is not your enemy. It's your partner. And when you give it what it needs, context, choice, and connection, it will let you live with more openness, more peace, and more joy. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love to have you share it with someone who needs it. And if you're a woman in the midlife who's navigating hard relationships and wants support doing this deeper nervous system work, I would love to connect with you about coaching. You can find me at seasons-coaching.com. Until next time, remember, joy isn't about getting life perfect. It's about being present to the grace that's already here. And I'll talk to you next time.